Esteemed audience, thank you for tuning in to watch KBC Channel 1, the home of the Great Debaters Contest. This is the platform that gives you the best high school debates in the country. I am your host, Chris Buru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. The motion on the table today is centered around Sustainable Development Goal number 1, zero poverty, and it states, colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa.
In the proposition making their premier appearance on the Great Debaters Contest, we have St. Thomas Girls Kilifi.
In the opposition, we have Canaan Mixed Secondary School. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
My name is Faith Choni from St. Thomas Girls Secondary School, and I'm here to propose the motion that says colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. I clearly support this. This is because, number 1, they have grabbed our lands. Europeans have grabbed our lands. We can get examples in Kenya. Watamu is occupied by Italians. We see Vipingo are occupied by the whites. Where are the Africans? We do not occupy any land. We cannot cultivate in our own lands. We cannot perform agriculture so that you can get a livelihood. How will we live in such a society? The second thing, slavery. Colonial powers brought along slavery in Africa. Atlantic slave trade, also called the Triangle Trade, reduced the population of West Africa by 50 million during the 18th century. This was a big blow to Nigerian economy. This is because we also see that in modern day slavery, e.g. in Libya, Africans are going to Libya, Africans want to go abroad. Why? This is because Europeans introduced slavery in Africa, and it has continued to take roots in Africa. It has taken roots in a manner of fact that people cannot express themselves, cannot work on whatever they find. Thirdly, they also grab our resources. European powers are franchising civil wars in Africa. We can also get an example in Libya. What did President Muammar Gaddafi do? Nothing. He was a dictator for 42 years and 19 days. But America sought to take him out of power. This is because they wanted oil from Libya. They wanted to take over the gold reserves found in AU. Why? Gaddafi had good plans for Africa, and they did this to make Africa poor. Fourthly, we can also see there is also brain drain in Africa. When European powers get to see that Africa has potential, they go over and pluck it out. Why pluck it out? They should not see anything good coming out from Africa. Doctors are shipped abroad. Africa will remain in its deteriorating state because colonial powers have decided that why should we give Africa an opportunity to expand while we colonized it, while we refer to them as the dark continent? Colonizers are the ones who are pulling us down. And I clearly stand firm to say colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. Thank you.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
I'm Feni Sada from Canaan Secondary School, and I'm here to oppose the motion that goes, colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. So, what is colonial dominance? It's the period when colonialists came to Africa, and as we assume that they came to oppress us, but this is not so. So let me just start by saying that a dream does not become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. Why am I saying this? We're claiming that colonialists are the root cause of poverty in Africa, but let us take these facts. Let's look at infrastructure. It allowed efficient management of resources in Africa, but us, we are claiming that the colonialists came they are the root cause for poverty in Africa. This is not so. Let's take India. They benefit because they put the infrastructure into use out of the small British education they got. and I'll state this example: small British educated intellectual class. Let's look at industrialization. It brought about technology that improved accessibility across Africa. An example of roads, rail, etc. that aided in trade and business at large. Industrialization also improved agricultural equipment, farming techniques. These laid the groundwork for several African nations. For example, this agricultural equipment that were improved, us Africans, instead of blaming the Europeans instead of blaming them and saying that they brought poverty to Africa, we should view it like this: we should have taken the skills that they educated us with and put them into work, and instead of blaming them, we could have alleviated poverty instead of just sitting around and blaming our own mistakes on some other people. Let's look at technology transfer. We benefit significantly through the transfer of ideas, skills, knowledge, education, etc., thanks to the bond that exists between our previous colonizers. Let's take an example of the Germans, the British, and the French people. These people came to Africa. Yes, they were colonialists, but then instead of just whining about the problems they brought here, let's look at it on the positive side. I like looking at things on the positive perspective. They came to Africa, they did whatever they did, but what important things did you learn from them? Or are you just sitting and looking at their bad side? We shouldn't be blaming these people for our own mistakes. Humans can blame you for one thing that you did wrong, but forget the 99 things that you did positively to help them. Thank you.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Dorcas Wamboi from St. Thomas Girls, proposing the motion that states colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. Yes, indeed I propose this motion. And I'd like to pose a question to you. Why do you assume, and it's the reality, it's the reality that the colonies, they brought poverty into Africa? Don't assume, you are here to speak the reality. On to my first point, the European commodities the Europeans, they cheated the Africans to sell the natural resources such as cocoa, rubber to the foreign states. They further sell the commodities at higher prices, making the Africans unable to purchase these commodities. Let's see an example of the crops that the Europeans brought to Africa. They brought wheat, they brought maize, and they brought tea, and they brought coffee. And today, they ask the Africans to sell for them the goods that they came to bring to Africa. And when they sell them as raw. When they go there, they process the materials that they have taken there. When they come back, they are still selling the materials. They are still selling the crops back to us that we have planted. They are still selling the materials back to us that we cultivated, that we put labor on us. And after that, all the profit that we've made from the profit that we've made from planting, it's all going to the European countries. Why? Because they claim that they are the ones who brought the crops into Africa. They claim that they are the owners of Africa, and thus making Africa be poor. On to my second point, Africa suffers from massive brain drains. Why? This has seen experts and skilled manpower leaving the countries to move to more developed countries that offer better terms for them. Let's look like the World Cup that ended up 15th July this year. The country that won was France. And many people who are playing for that country, the 4 players of them, they were from Africa. And when France came to Africa, they came to Africa. They bought the people to go and play for them. They gave them the citizenship of France. Why? Because they know that the African people, they can do it better than them. And that is why they went with them there. They are given money to develop their country and not our country. Why this? The colonial domination, they brought poverty into Africa. and not Africans themselves. On to my third point. When the Europeans came to Africa, they disrupted our African culture. Why? They disrupted our African culture. Let's see, for example, like the tattoos which the Africans were putting long before. The clothes which the Africans were putting long before. The dances that they were putting on, that they were dancing, they were interesting. Where are they now? Where are they? The colonizers came to Africa. They took the Africans. They made them feel that whatever they were doing was not valuable, and thus made them to do whatever they wanted to do, thus leading to poverty in Africa. Thank you.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for re-examination.
I'm Owen Mwangala from Canaan School, and I'm here to strongly oppose this motion. I'll begin by saying that failure to respect and implement the law contravenes domestic and international status. I'll begin by answering the first proposer. He said that slavery led to poverty in West African countries. Let's cite an example from Nigeria. Nigeria is being ranked among the top richest countries in Africa. Why? This is because the Europeans, the colonizers who came to West Africa, did not lead Nigeria into poverty, but it is out of the skills and it was out of the skills and the slavery the skills which the slaves acquired from the colonizers is what Nigeria used to build its economy, and right now it's among the top richest countries in Africa. But the colonizers did not go to Nigeria to make it poor. Secondly, I want to put clear my points. Colonial dominance was an eye-opener for African countries. Why am I saying this? If the colonizers did not come to Kenya, to Africa in short, how could we know our rich heritage? How could we know the importance of what we are having here in Africa? The oils, the minerals. How could we be able to know that these things are valuable? Let's say, for an example, the colonizers did not come here to steal from us, but the colonizers came here to open our eyes. Let's say, for an example, the colonizers are not here in Kenya right now, but we have the Webuye company in Western. That company is still lying unused until right now. Why? Because the colonizers went from Africa and they have not come back. But we as Kenyans, we have failed, and we have failed to use our own resources so that we can build our own economy. It is us Kenyans who are supposed to build our own economy, but not accuse the colonizers who came here to open our eyes. Secondly, education. The colonizers came to Africa to empower us, to give us knowledge. Let's say, for an example, the colonizers came to Africa. It's true, majority of the African countries are poor right now, but it is out of our ignorance and negligence. That's why we are becoming poor. The first thing, the schools and universities which the colonizers were using, they left all those schools here in Africa. It is us as the African people to go to those schools, to learn, to get the skills that the colonizers were using, so that we can boost our own economic positions. But it is not us to stay and lag behind, complaining that the colonizers came here to steal from us. Finally, I like to put something clear. We have imperialism and colonization. Imperialism, the European came into Africa interested in the resources, but colonization, the act of controlling Africans with all they had, that led with no bad intentions. Thank you.
The proposers have been asked to substantiate how many people in Kenya or what percentage of Kenyans are landless directly due to colonialism. The opposers have been asked to prove that the benefits of colonialism outweigh the demerits that came with it. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I'm Ruth Njagi from St. Thomas High School. I would like to answer my fellow students who was asked, how I should explain to you how the colonists have brought poverty. How was this brought? Okay, let me ask you, how many people are living in slums? Let's take, for example, in Kibera. How many people are there living in slums? Okay, let me take you to Nyeri. The Delemea farms, it's owned by a white, isn't it? It is a white who owns that place. Now let me ask you, if it was an African who was owning that place, the Delemea farms, the plant tea leaves. What if it was an African who was owning that land? Wouldn't we be rich? On to my first point. The colonialism, it brought erosion of African culture. Let me take an example by the technology, whereby the youth nowadays rely on betting. In African traditional, people used to be divided. They used to give work according to their gender. But what's happening nowadays? You find the youths, they do not even want to work manual labor. Remember, hard work pays. But what's happening nowadays? Youth are just going into betting. They only rely on betting, doing what? Getting to poverty. What if you don't? What if you lose? You're losing the betting. You find another means like stealing. Then you get arrested. What happens? It lowers the economy of the country. Remember, the youth are the tomorrow's leaders of African countries. On to my second point. The colonization brought economic slavery. How did it bring? By neocolonialism in the modern society. Look at, for example, the SGR. 70% of the workers there are Chinese. Now you want to tell me Africans cannot work in the SGR? Can't they? Africans can work in the SGR. But what is happening? Neocolonialism has brought, the Chinese are the ones given the work to work there in the SGR, leaving the Africans poor, leading to the African countries going poorer each and every moment. On to my third point, creation of boundaries. This brought poverty in Africa. For example, long before the Europeans come, the African used to live as one continent, isn't it? They used to live in one continent. They used to believe in unity. Unity is strength, remember. But what happens when the Europeans came? Some people collaborated, others resisted, others they did the misreaction. Now, do you want to tell me, if you are resisting, I am collaborating, would we speak the same language? Would we even trade between me and you who are collaborating, and you and I who am resisting? Will we even speak in the same language? So I'm here to propose the motion that says colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. Thank you.
Proposer, you have 3 minutes to respond.
I'm Stephen Juliet from Canaan Mixed Secondary School. I'd like to remind my fellow proposers that that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is a progress, working together is success. Those are sayings from Henry Ford. I simply mean this. Working together with the Europeans, we are going to benefit more than claiming that Europeans, they brought up poverty. I'm going to give you, I'll first like to ask something from the proposers. You've said that Europeans were grabbing our land. I like to inform you people, we have different things. There's what you call colonization, and there's also what you call imperiority. Imperiority, it came before colonization, and imperiority, it is the act of grabbing people resources. And colonization, it is forcing people to do things, or forcing people to do things that they don't want. And in fact, let me remind you something also. In the Berlin Conference, people agreed that Europeans are not here to fight against the Africans. They were here to help us. It is just Africans who are stubborn. Africans, they couldn't collaborate with the Europeans. That's why certain things came to happen. You've even talked about Watamu. Europeans have taken Watamu properties, but I'll also like to tell you something. We get employment from those facilities from the Europeans. You've also talked about tea farming. We do get tea leaves from that factory. Our people are employed. When they are employed, they are fighting against poverty. If European the European colonization, it doesn't bring poverty actually. It is alleviating poverty. We are not bringing poverty, my fellow people. And also, you've been also, there's my fellow sister, you've asked that we are just looking at the advantages of colonization, leaving behind the damages that those damages, I agree, there are some damages, but the main reason of all those damages, it is just that we didn't work with the Europeans. Europeans were here to assist us, but as Africans, we couldn't think about it. Yeah, I agree, we've got different facilities, but we don't know how to use them. The Europeans, they came to Africa, they have educated us on how people are going to use those facilities. They've sharpened our brains. We didn't know. You've been claiming that we are adopting the Europeans' cultures. I think no one forces you to wear clothes. Or is there anyone, or is there any European behind you with a stick commanding you, wear clothes? Actually, he's not there. You are the one whom you've agreed to wear the clothes. And they are very beneficial. They are protecting us clothes. So people, I urge you, you've been just claiming colonization, but I'm here to say that colonization, it is an advantage. And when we apply colonization, we are going to fight against poverty. Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for final submission.
Once again, I'm Faith Choni from the proposer side. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And we all have to agree that colonization brought along poverty. My dear friends, you have to understand that everything has its bad side. And so, colonial domination in Africa brought bad. Why? You can see it all around you. We have no expression of ourselves. This is because they have taken hold of everything we have. Thank you.
Opposition, you have 1 minute for your final statement.
Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason why so few engage in it, Henry Ford once said. Instead of focusing on the negative impacts colonialists left in our continent, we should work on how to solve the problem at hand, which is poverty, obviously, and try to find ways to alleviate it. Les Brown once said, "The winners, the losers, and also the people who have not yet learned how to win. Do not be losers, my fellow Kenyans. And also, you're not forced to be winners, but what you are supposed to do is open your eyes, work, alleviate poverty, and better your lives and Africa at large." Thank you.
Faith Choni on the proposing side. Good voice projection. You made a fair attempt to introduce the motion, and the examples, though again, you lacked the in-depth. Second speaker, a good rebuttal. I liked the observation, or rather the statement, that colonialists brought poverty to Africa, not to the Africans themselves. And the example that you gave, for instance, how they have been able to enrich the individuals, the footballers, and yet, back home, those footballers, their own people are languishing in poverty. So that was a good observation. Third speaker, that is Ruth. You made, again, a fair attempt to answer the question, but you're not able to tell us how. Again, we get back to what we said, it lacked in-depth. You're not able, for instance, to tell us how how the property, the land that is owned by the Delamere family, if it were owned by an African, what difference would it make? How would it make the Africans rich? Because that was your argument. If it were owned by an African, then the Africans would be rich. How? So you're not able to convince us on the same.
Fanny, good definition of terms. I expected your team, the motion is a colonial domination is the root cause of poverty in Africa. As the opposers, you could have taken another angle and say, colonial domination is not actually the root cause of poverty. We have corruption, political instability, irrelevant system of education, and so on and so forth. From that angle, you could have made the opposers look like they really did not have convincing arguments in terms of colonial domination. Owen, you're a good debater. Stephen, Juliet, the concept of imperiality? There is something you were saying, but I felt like you meant imperialism for that matter, not the other one. But you're good. You're good. You can make it.
And now for the results. St. Thomas Girls High School, you earned yourself 67%. Let's appreciate them. Canaan Mixed Secondary School, you earned yourself 67%, so it's a tie. Let's appreciate both teams. Congratulations for a good debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to appreciate each and every person who's been able to make this show a reality, from the sponsors, principals, patrons of each and every participating school. Remember, you can be part of the show also by following the conversation across all social media platforms with the hashtag GDC for SDGs. Until the next episode, I have been your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. See you in the next episode.